Ahoy there, Captain Benzie here, coming at you with another video for Eve Echoes. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the new Dreadnoughts, new capital ships that are being added to Eve Echoes later this month. Thanks to the virtual test interference event, we've been able to actually fly these 4 capital ships, that is to say the Gallente Federation Moros, the Amarr Empire Revelation, the Caldari States Phoenix, and the Minmatat Republic Naglfar. Now, in this video, I'm going to go through each of those ships one by one, so if there's a particular ship you want to get my opinion on, then check in the description below for the timestamp that will jump you to that particular dreadnought. Otherwise, at the very end of the video as well, there'll be a final section rounding up my thoughts on dreadnoughts, in particular how they actually fit into Eve Echoes, including the test and beyond the test as well, how they are actually going to fit into the universe at large. Because if you've been watching my channel at all for a while, you should know that I'm kind of against these being added. I'm not overly excited personally. I'm glad that people who are excited for this are getting to fly some ships they like, but to me, I'm looking at capitals and thinking, you know, there's so much stuff that needs fixing in Eve Echoes before we get these. I just don't think they're necessary yet. I don't think they have a place. Well, now that we've had the virtual test interference, now that I've been able to get hands-on with the Dreadnoughts, what do I think about these going forward? Has this changed my mind? Well, stick around toward the end of the video to find out. Now, if you do enjoy this video, please let me know by hitting like on it, sub to the channel for all things Eve Echoes, ding that notification bell, and please make sure that you check all notifications. That way you will never miss an upload. I keep getting asked, oh, Benzie, I didn't even realise you had that particular video. I missed that one. Why wasn't I alerted? Probably because you haven't dinged the notification bell and ticked all videos. Beyond that as well, if you do want to go the extra mile to support this channel, there is a Redbubble merchandise store and a Patreon page where you can earn exclusive merchandise as well. Anyway, beyond that, as I said, let's have a look at the different dreadnoughts currently in Eve Echoes. We're going to be having a look at those 4 ships, how they stand up in the virtual test, and what this means for Eve Echoes going forward. Before we do, final point, I really like this piece of artwork. If you're confused, that is of course the Minmatat Republic's Naglfar being constructed in a dockyard somewhere, and I like it. I think it's a really cool piece of artwork. Anyway, let's jump right in and have a look at the 4 individual dreadnoughts first of all, then we'll round it off with a thoughts and analysis at the very end of it all. The first dreadnought that we're going to look at today then is the Gallente Federation Moros. Now visually I really don't like the look of this one. It's super lumpy and it just feels all over the place. But it is Gallente Federation, so of course we're looking at armor tanking and railguns, and in the test it comes with snub-nosed railguns that have an optimal range of about 24 kilometers and an accuracy fall-off of similar, so you're looking at about 50% effective snub-nosed at 50 kilometers. And as you can see, during the tests I had no trouble whatsoever dealing with enemy ships. The DPS of snub-nosed is absolutely monstrous. The optimal range and accuracy fall-off is also fantastic, so I'm 2-shotting if not 1-shotting battle cruisers. Now, you may have also spotted that Dreadnoughts have a special activatable mode called, hilariously, Showdown mode. And what this essentially does is it stops them warping. They cannot warp when they're in this mode. They have much higher mass, not that it matters, because they've also got a movement penalty of a full 100%. They just cannot move whatsoever. And they get extra range to missiles thanks to flight speed, plus additional damage. It doesn't seem that they get additional turret range though. They do get a lot of additional turret damage though. I think it's 740% additional turret damage once they're in showdown mode. Now, when I was testing the Moros, I did this with most of the Dreadnoughts to be fair, but I tend to go for the resilience or the sort of defensive where possible, just so that, you know, we can use those and you know, I'm trying to go for the survival side of things. Certainly with the Moros, as you could see if I just skip ahead a little bit here, the damage that this kicks out really is not a problem at all. It's annoying when the test gives you an afterburner because it's like you're never going to use that. But you'll see once we lock onto things, which we do lock onto fairly quickly. I'm not sure if that's part of the test or if that is just how capitals are going to be, which seems ridiculously fast lock-on time. But hey, there we go. I suppose we are going up against battleships and battle cruisers. But again, you can see that in showdown mode there, the snub-nosed railguns are doing absolutely monstrous damage to like the incoming ships, like 4,000, 6,000 damage per shot. Now the Moros, as much as I hate how it looks, I actually quite like how this flies, and I can see this being quite a popular choice just because of how incredible the capital-sized snub-nosed railguns are. Like rifled railguns, I've not had a chance to have a look at these, but the snub-nosed alone, the fact that you can get 50 kilometers comfortable with a snub-nose, these things can shoot 70 kilometers and still do damage, although obviously you want theoretically 25 kilometers is your optimal. The closer you are to that, the better. But it just means that for something like ratting, this is going to be an excellent choice because it's rare that something is orbiting at all like closer than 30 kilometers. So as long as you can shoot something on its approach, you know, you sit there at a long range, you wait for it to come to you kind of thing, and you snipe before it clears the 30 kilometer range, then you're going to be absolutely fine with this. And the damage that it can kick out, as I said, is monstrous. You can see that I'm taking out battleships and battle cruisers, no problems at all. I think the Moros is going to be popular. I did get some good tanking sort of information from this as well, and it does seem to tank damage really quite well. I couldn't get an active tank in any of the tests I've run, but as a passive sort of buffer tank, it did really well. The Moros, I think, was actually the one I got furthest with in the test and came in second position a couple of times. I really rate this Dreadnought. I think it is going to be an excellent choice for players who want to use it both for PvE and for PvP, although as you'd expect for PvP, you are going to want to have a fleet in support. The only downside to it, in my opinion, is that absolutely horrific look to it. It's not a pretty ship. It's typical Gallente, what the hell were they thinking kind of thing. Now, anyone who knows me in EVE Echoes knows that I am primarily a Minmatat player, and I kind of have a thing against the Amarr. Not, you know, in any realistic sense, it's just the whole backstory of, you know, how the Amarr treated the Minmatat. In fairness, I do actually really like lasers as a weapon system, and I do also think that some of the Amarr ships are really quite, you know, some of the most powerful ships in the game. I just don't tend to like how ostentatious and sort of that gold and silver and bone colour scheme to them. It just looks a little bit too much for my opinion. Now, here we have the Revelation, which is the Amarr Dreadnought. I really like the look of this one. Visually, this is a very pleasing Dreadnought. Not that you can see it because of the whole shield going on here right now, but yeah, it's a really interesting looking Dreadnought, and here we can see this is equipped, I think this is with beam lasers, and just the damage again is absolutely monstrous. We are one-shotting through most battle cruisers here, no trouble at all. And damage coming in, again, we're on shields at the moment, and of course Amarr ships have absolutely pathetic shields, but you can see it's not really taking much. I find it weird as well how like the turrets are kind of on these stalks sticking out the side of the ship. Now again, when I fit this in these tests, the first thing I'm going for each time is defense where possible. So I'm looking at things like armor hardeners, possibly things like armor extenders, then from there perhaps tracking computers and heat sinks for the additional damage. Let's skip ahead a little bit and see the second wave of this going up against battleships. Now lasers, as I've said in other videos elsewhere, are absolutely monstrous as a weapon system. Look at that, 12,000 damage per shot there because a nice solid hit on that Megathron, cut through its shields like a hot knife through butter. This again, it's a Dreadnought. Of course it's going to be doing absolutely massive damage. I think this again is going to be an excellent choice of Dreadnoughts. I mean, we've seen with the Apocalypse Striker that large lasers are probably some of the most overpowered weapons in the game. I've watched Zyrus B in Catskill sit there with an Apocalypse Striker that has 4,500 DPS at an optimal range of 100 kilometers, and it's mad. It's mad, and I don't think Capitals are going to be any worse than that. I found that here the Revelation was nice and tanky. I got lucky on a couple of the test runs where I did get some good tanking modules come through and actually get to try that out. But it's a solid Dreadnought, and I just think that with the power that we have with large lasers, I don't imagine that capital lasers are going to be any worse. It strikes me as this is going to be one of the best of the Dreadnoughts. It looks amazing. Its power is definitely something, you know, it's a scary ship, is what I'm trying to say here. This is a scary ship that just rips through enemy fleets. Again, I think I did get to second place in the test in this once. I consistently got through the final wave and got into like 4th and 3rd position and things like that. Again, very, very powerful Dreadnought. I really like this one. I think it is an excellent choice. It's got a good balance of tankiness to damage output, and I think it is going to do really, really well. Now, I'm usually a big fan of Caldari ships, so I was quite excited to get to test the Phoenix. I was looking forward to this. I've tried some of the other ships already, enjoyed how they fly, and thought this would be one that I would really enjoy as well. Now, I don't know if you saw how much damage that missile strike did to a Corellan Brutix, but watch it now, 725 damage from that shot. The previous shot was 302. This suffers immediately from the same problems that all large ships are suffering with when it comes to missiles. Large missiles just have absolutely terrible application. If you look at like the Raven Striker and how it can apply its damage in siege mode, you're looking at very much that same problem here with the Phoenix. Again, the damage of these is absolutely monstrous, you know, when you look at the actual stats on paper, but again, if we watch the strike here, you'll see it takes, obviously it's got its missile flight time, and the damage that actually applies to the target is, simply put, pathetic. I didn't kill a single ship in that first wave. In most of the other tests I'd done with the other Dreadnoughts, I had almost cleared the wave. In fact, with the Moros, I think I did clear the wave. The Revelation often just, you know, was 1 or 2 ships off clearing the wave. Again, I've gone for tankiness here. I think if you're going with something like this and you want to use it for some kind of actual combat, you know, output for damage potential, ratting or something like that, then the Phoenix is really, really going to need some heavy application. Whether that's missile control computers or some of the rigs to, you know, actually bring that application down. Things like the explosion velocity increase, explosion radius decrease, that kind of stuff. Otherwise, it just cannot put its damage to anything. It's terrible. Even here against battleships, you can see, whereas the other Dreadnoughts were basically two-shotting battleships, here the Phoenix, I'm on my 3rd strike and I'm only just halfway through the shields on a Megathron, not exactly a ship known for its shields. That said, however, the Phoenix does appear to be one of the tankiest of all the Dreadnoughts. You may not be able to kill much, but no one really is going to be able to kill you either. The shields on this thing are absolutely monstrous, and if you can get a good active shield tank on here with some good shield resistances and things like that, this is not a ship that is going down anytime soon. Like, I'm not killing anything, so I'm not thinning the herd, but I'm not taking all that much damage either, considering all I've got is resistance modules on this particular run that you're looking at, and the fact that I'm still sitting at about 40% shields toward the end of wave 2, I think is really quite impressive, because I've got no way to repair those shields. I'm just sitting on resistances. I don't know, the Phoenix to me was underwhelming. I like how it looks, I like the theory of it, I want to love this ship more than I could. Just the simple fact is that those missiles, the way that they apply their damage to targets, is just, it's horrific. It's absolutely horrific. If we come through to the next wave, you'll get to see this again. Battleships again in this wave, battleships and a couple of battle cruisers. If we were to actually activate, you know, and fire these missiles, you'll see in a second, just there's no damage. There is no damage at all. There again, we've got a Hyperion, which is a large battleship. I've got ballistic control systems there to, you know, add on extra damage, but it just does nothing. The application is absolutely terrible, and for me, during the test at least, the Phoenix was the most underwhelming, because I just couldn't clear anything. I don't think I even got into the finals anytime through any of this. I think I didn't, you know, the actual player versus player final wave where you go up against the other Dreadnoughts. I never really made it that far, just because I couldn't do any damage, which means I'm taking full damage from everything firing back at me. I think that this is kind of okay as far as Dreadnoughts go. It fits their purpose nicely, but for the test, yeah, the Phoenix was very, very underwhelming. Finally then, the Minmatat Naglfar. This is actually probably one of my least favourite looking of these, which is interesting because I'm normally a big fan of Minmatar ships. Obviously, if you follow my channel or know anything about me, you'll know how I feel about Minmatar. I'm not a huge fan of the vertical design here, though it does do remarkably well. Once we are here in showdown mode and we start activating the autocannons, these autocannons have insane accuracy fall off. They're kind of like the snub nose. They do really, really well. Very high damage output, and just the range on them means, again, you're one-shotting battle cruisers. You're doing insane amount of damage to anything out there. And looking at its actual stats as well, this again, like most Minmatat ships, is going to do pretty well as either a shield tank or an armor tank. So if you want something that's got a bit of versatility, I do think the Naglfar takes it in that sense. It would have been nice to see strike cannons in this as well, and just to get a feel of what a capital strike cannon could look like in terms of its alpha damage and its optimal range and accuracy fall off. But the simple fact that the autocannons are doing this well means I don't feel cheated by that. I'm going to skip ahead through the selection here, through to the next wave. And you'll see here that, again, I've gone for tanking where possible. I had to go for armor tanking because it was the only thing I really had as an option at this point. Which, in this particular test, did let it down. I found that the shield tanking worked just a little bit better than the armor tanking, but as far as the Naglfar goes, it feels like it's sort of a halfway point. It's not quite as tanky as perhaps the Phoenix could be, but it definitely has a much better damage output, making this kind of a better all-rounder, it felt like. Now, maybe I'm just biased by the fact that it's a cannon ship, and everyone knows how much I love my cannons, but again, the sound that these make, the sort of just the visuals of blasting enemy ship open with autocannons of this magnitude, I mean, look at that, optimal range 25 kilometers, accuracy fall off 33 kilometers. That's an autocannon. That is 50 kilometers before you're sort of hitting the 50 points. No, sorry, that's nearly 60 kilometers. Nearly 60 kilometers before you're hitting the 50% mark. And this ship just did really, really well. The particular footage I've got here, I don't get too far because I got absolutely screwed out when it came to the different modules and that I was allowed to fit in this test. But in several tests further than that, I did manage to get into the finals, and I found that every time I was getting into that final round, it was usually a Naglfar that was winning it. I just guess they got better luck than I did in regards to which modules they were choosing, or maybe they just knew something that I didn't. Either way though, the Naglfar, again, I'm not a huge fan of how it looks, but I do think this is probably one of the best balanced and most versatile of all of the Dreadnoughts. So those are the 4 Dreadnoughts that we have in the test themselves, and I've talked about them individually. Now I want to just sit there and talk about Dreadnoughts as a whole. How do these actually feel in regards to Eve Echoes? What kind of things are you going to be able to do with them? Do I think they need buffs, nerfs, and changes and things like that? So let's move on to that. Now for this section, I've just got that footage of the Moros again playing in the background, just because I quite liked how the footage went on this one. Obviously not relevant to the topic at hand, so don't worry about what you're seeing on screen. The question I wanted to ask then is, how are Dreadnoughts actually in sort of the grand scheme of things? How are they looking? What do they need buffs? Do they need nerfs? What is their purpose in Eve Echoes, and how's this going? Now, the first thing that I will say in regards to Dreadnoughts in Eve Echoes is that this test has not changed my mind. I haven't done this test and suddenly come away feeling like Dreadnoughts have a place in the game. I really don't think they do. Like, what you've got here is an incredibly expensive ship that just does ratting faster, or will do, like, you know, be the center of a PvP fleet, but it's also going to be the biggest target in a PvP fleet. Now, in regards to their actual stats, are they tanky enough? Well, yes, the amount of firepower that these things are taking with very little in the way of tanking modules equipped during the test was monstrous. It's what you'd expect for something like a capital ship. They have very high EHP, and they're going to take a long time to kill if they're in the middle of a fleet and if they're properly fitted with actual tanking modules. Their damage output, for the most part, again, felt monstrous. This is what they're supposed to be. These are supposed to be absolutely monstrous ships. The issue that I have is that, of course, they still suffer from the same thing as the Striker battleships, in that the turret versions are just categorically better than the missile versions because of how missile application works and how turret application works. With missiles, you're stuck with that terrible application. There's nothing you can really do. You can fit modules to try and reduce the application so that it applies better, but you're just going to be wrestling with that against most targets. Whereas when it comes to cannons and lasers and railguns, because most of their application issues come from moving targets, targets, as long as you sit at a high enough range that everything coming towards you has no angular velocity whatsoever, you're not going to struggle to kill anything, which means that these are going to be absolutely insane for ratting, assuming that you can get, you warp in at 100 kilometers and that you can kill everything before it gets too close for, to do it then. The issue with that, though, is so many battleships are already doing that really well. Like, if I were to compare, for example, the Revelation and an Apocalypse Striker, if you were looking for a ship to go ratting in, I don't get why you would go beyond the Apocalypse Striker. The Dreadnought, ultimately itself, the Revelation, it's going to cost magnitudes more ISK. The skill points, if we look at how, for example, cruiser compares to battlecruiser, how battlecruiser compares to battleship, we can kind of hypothesize and theorize how capital skills are going to look compared to battleship skills, which means you are going to be very low on capital ship skills. It's going to take a hell of a lot of skill points to actually invest in these, plus the actual investment in ISK in the ship itself. I think that capital ships are going to be the best thing you can use for ratting, theoretically, but the actual cost of getting one of these, plus the risk of then losing it to sort of invaders and things like that, I just don't see the point in using this for something like ratting, which means, just go for the battleships. The capitals don't have a necessary place. They are tankier than the battleships, they're faster than the battleships, but faster to kill than the battleships, they do more damage, but they cost so much more as well that I just don't think that anyone who buys a Dreadnought is ever going to actually make that back with ratting. The people who are flying things like an Apocalypse Striker are already capable of clearing all of the content in the game solo, so I just don't see that the capital ships, the Dreadnoughts, have any place there whatsoever, which means then that surely their position is PvP based. And, well, yes, look, when we added the whole Intosis link and the ability to upgrade the different citadels, we also increased the amount of damage per tick, the damage ticks for citadels. So yeah, whereas striker battleships in siege mode were already exceeding the damage tick on a citadel and thus, hitting the damage tick and being capped, here with the Dreadnoughts, yes, you might have a reason to bring one of these out as something to actually use for a citadel takedown, for example. I don't know. I'm still of the opinion that if you could bring one Dreadnought or 5 battleships, the 5 battleships are going to do more for the same cost. So this just leaves me in this position where I'm looking at Dreadnoughts and thinking, I don't get what these are doing. What are these Dreadnoughts actually in the game to do? And that's not to say that I think they need buffs. I don't think they need buffs. Looking at Dreadnoughts and having tested them thoroughly during this event, I don't think Dreadnoughts need buffs at all. I think that they do enough damage. They definitely have enough tank. I just don't think there's a position for them. It's not a case of whether or not you can buff them or nerf them or anything like that. I think they're okay. I just don't see that there's a purpose for them. Even if you buffed them, they're not suddenly going to be good for ratting or good for PvP. You're still going to get more out of battleships considering the cost of them. The short line is that this test has cemented in my mind that I just don't see capital ships, or at least Dreadnoughts, as something that we even need in EVE Echoes right now. It just doesn't seem to me that there is a purpose to having these ships in the game, and I don't know, maybe you've really enjoyed flying these in the test, maybe you've really enjoyed them and, you're absolutely sold that yes, you want to be a capital ship pilot. Me, on the other hand, I'm absolutely happy with cruisers and battleships and frigates and battle cruisers and things like that. I don't think there is any need for anything more than that. I'm just going to scroll back to keep that going. I can keep saying it in all kinds of different ways. I just don't think there's a place for capital ships in EVE Echoes. I don't think there's a need for them. They're force multipliers in a PvP fleet that are going to be a scary big target. Everyone's going to go for them and destroy them as quickly as they can. I just think that for the cost, battleships are going to be better. Cynosural fields may be the thing that changes it. Once we see these in application and actually jumping from system to system using Cyno fields, then maybe that will change my mind, but I just don't think so. I just don't think so. Anyway folks, those are my thoughts and opinions here regarding Dreadnoughts in EVE Echoes. I've really enjoyed flying these in the test. It's one of these things that I'm glad that I got to try them out. I'm glad I got to see them. I genuinely don't think they need any form of buff. I think they're pretty good as they are. I don't think they need any nerfs either. I think that the problems that Dreadnoughts have are problems that are just with EVE Echoes as a whole, not with the ships themselves. That is to say that the Phoenix with its missiles, you can't really solve that without making missiles absolutely ridiculous. It means that the Phoenix is going to be excellent at taking out other Dreadnoughts and Citadels, but not much else, which means the other ones are going to be pretty much your better option due to how EVE Echoes works, but I still don't think there's a purpose for them. But let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. Which ship did you enjoy flying the most out of these? How do you feel about capital ships? Are you excited for them? Are you more excited than you were before the test? Are you less excited than you were before the test? Please, I genuinely want to know your thoughts and opinions because I feel like I'm very biased against capitals. I tried to go into this with a completely open mind and to give it as fair a thought as possible, but that's still my opinion. They don't have a place for me. They're good fun, but I just don't think they are ever going to be worth it until we suddenly have a lot more other systems in EVE Echoes in place that are going to actually necessitate having these ships. Anyway, as I said, let me know your thoughts and opinions. Otherwise, happy sailing, and see you in New Eden!